E aí, pessoal, tudo bem? Bom, se você não manja dos paranoias de inglês, você se lascou. Coloca aí a legenda automaticamente gerada em português. Talvez resolva, talvez não, porque talvez a minha dicção seja horrível. My name is Fausto. I'm Brazilian. My parents were Japanese. It explains my looks. But I was born in Brazil and I feel 100% Brazilian. And I'm making this video to a student of mine. I teach her Portuguese. She's from West Virginia and now she lives in Boston. I want to share my perspective over how we in Brazil see Israel and this conflict in the Middle East, so that you don't get fooled by people trying to convince you otherwise. Well, here is what the guy says that
Million Brazilians gathered in support of Israel after the politician Lula said some anti-Israel rhetoric in the past few weeks, and they are standing together with Israel. Check it out.
many Israeli flags. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, and this umbrella that is definitely Israeli. Okay. I don't think there's a. I don't think there's 2 million people here. But anyways, um, I'll try to tell you what the average Brazilian thinks of Israel, not the 5% of academics who know what's going on, and not 1% of the people who really love geopolitics and international relationships and and know exactly what's going on in the Middle East. I will just try to describe what the average Brazilian, who is so busy and so tired of working so hard, and also busy loving their own soccer and culture and country and families. What this guy hears about Israel, what they think and they feel about Israel, and why their behavior in many different layers about Israel might suggest that they support something that they don't. This is the goal of this video. Brazilian people, I'm saying the average Brazilian in among this 95%, they don't even understand what Zionism is. They don't even understand American propaganda. So I have beloved people that get confused by Zionists, and I love this doctor. She's a brilliant psychiatrist, and yet she talks to a Zionist and thinks she's dealing with a impartial academic, and she really buys all his speech. And I cannot blame her, and I cannot say that she is a Palestinian killer, because she's not. She's just not talking about her specialization and listening to someone who is very admired and respected by the way they explain geopolitics. And the average Brazilian person doesn't know he's a Zionist. Then you need to understand what actually Brazil is. And Brazil is a place to run away from Second World War. We were discovered in the 1500s, but we were only populated in the 1800s, and we were basically farmers and slaves. But then after the First and the Second World War, we become a place to run away. So people who survived, but they were still persecuted, people who lost their lands and had nowhere to go, people who were tired of conflict and wanted some peace, they all escaped, and they sail to Brazil because the planes were not available or affordable back then. My father himself came to Brazil in the 50s, and he came in a 2 month trip by ship from Japan when the country was devastated. And when you ask what is our traditional food, we will say maybe feijoada, because and it's traditional in the way that sushi is for the Japanese. It doesn't mean that we have or we eat feijoada every day. Some might just have other answers, but I think that the real Brazilian meal uh, is actually what you choose when you go to a regular restaurant and you see 30 or 40 different options, and you just choose what you pick, and you pay either by weight or by person. It means that you pay a more expensive price and you can eat as much as you can. Um, I say that this is very Brazilian because when you look at the options, you have Italian food, Japanese food, Arabic food, um, African food, and they are all together, and you just pick whatever you want, and at the end, you have your own meal. I think this is the most typical Brazilian food, and tourists seems to love them. Um, and it also applies to religion. Yes, there are people who are very faithful and very dogmatic about their beliefs, but there's a very big number, maybe majority of the population, who just say that they belong to a specific religion, but they don't even realize, but they follow lots of different rituals from different religions. And this is a natural consequence of this big interchange and this big merge of cultures and food and habits and rituals we we build here. So you can have a friend who says he's Catholic, but he has uh, some rituals that from um, African rituals that are from some tribal religions in Africa. You can even have some atheists who have some habits they acquired from family that are from multiple cultures and religions. And there are people who say that they are Christians, but when they want a partner, they go to a African religion center, and when they miss their granddad, they go to a spiritist uh, church, and they just believe in what suits and what suits their needs. And this is who we are. So maybe 30 years ago, you asked us about our religions, and 90% of us would say that we are Christians, and a big part of this, maybe 70% of this amount, would say that they were Catholic, and the Catholics in Brazil used to go to church a lot more often than they do nowadays. But this changed along the years, and now I think most Christians are evangelic, and they have different habits, practices, and some different beliefs from the Catholic, even though they think they are worshiping the same God. But they have a stronger sense of community. They have more commitment to the practices and the small community they are part of. And they are politically engaged. People from evangelic churches, they also are more susceptible to influence of some political parties that will be the chosen ones on that specific election. which in this case has been the extreme right more recently. And here it goes. Uh, Evangelic believe that Israel the state of Israel has an important role to fulfill before the return of the Messiah. They are waiting for the return of Jesus, and they do believe that there are prophecies that say that Israel, the people of Israel, the state of Israel, have an important role to fulfill before Jesus comes back. And this can be easily manipulated into making people think that the state of Israel nowadays is the same Israel that was chosen by God in the Old Testament, and therefore that Israel nowadays is doing the right thing because they are the people of God. So the average Brazilian, as much as Americans are really definitely not good in geography, and in my opinion, there's a reason for this, because if you understood what happens in the Middle East, you would never settle. You would never be okay with your government. Um, the average Brazilian can't tell the difference between Christianism and Judaism, and the state of Israel today, which was founded by the United States in 1949, and the Israel of the Bible. And this makes things very complicated. And can I hate this 2 million people that are 2 million people is like 1% of the population of Brazil, the country, and they don't fit in Avenida Paulista. But let's say that there are 2 million people here. Do you think every person on this avenue want Palestinian children starving to death, deprived of water, dying of thirst? Do you think these people here want that and agree with the genocide and the massacre that is going on in Gaza? These people don't know it. Don't know it because the media is not the media, just like in the United States. The media doesn't show what happens in Gaza. Our media is American and is interpreted by specialists like this, who are in essence Zionists. So we don't have wide access for the majority of the population to what is actually going on in Gaza. And if they don't know the genocide that is going on, if they don't know that the children are being killed, bombed, starved to death, if they don't know, and if they think that the Israel state today is the Israel people of God in the Old Testament, then of course they will think that Israel is doing the right thing because they know better. And this is why when you ask if they are happy with Israel, they might say yes. And there's another thing. If the evangelic church is now supportive to the extreme right, it means that the left is evil, and whatever the corrupt current president Lula says is evil. Yes, the current president of Brazil, Lula, is corrupt, which doesn't mean that the right representatives are not. But the whatever Lula does will be not only shown, not only the crimes he commits will be shown, but every single detail in his moral and his behavior and his beliefs and his being will be demonized in a way to show that God is really with the extreme right and not on the left. Because traditionally the left is more supportive to minorities, which in this case are majorities in Brazil, like black people, gay people, uh, women struggling against misogyny. If the left presents themselves as protectors of these less favored classes, these less favored people, then the right, being antagonic to the left, will say that they have the virtue, they have the tradition, they have they want to save society from immorality. And when Cambridge Analytica appeared, it defended Cambridge Analytica discovered what how to engage people that were no longer watching television commercials, that were no longer listening to the radio stations. Cambridge Analytica taught parties how to deal with this new generation that is only on the internet all the time, spending time on social medias, and they showed parties what worked to this new society, what would engagement, what would have them vote for the party that was sponsoring them. And in the word for Cambridge Analytica, among many others, was reactionarism. We miss our old days when we were children, when we didn't understand shit of how life worked, when things were simpler, safer, more pleasant, when we were wiser and we had control because we were children and we had no idea what control meant, so we thought we had it. So in UK, they said, let's take back control because, of course, the current Londoner is completely powerless without any control of his life or his country. So when you say, let's take back control, it brings a reactionary feeling that UK once knew what they were doing and had control of half of the planet. So it sounds like music and the Londoners, so they voted for the Brexit. In the United States, it was represented by Let's Make America Great Again. And for the boomers, it sounded like music because after the Second World War, United States was the leadership of the planet, and it was the most powerful industry and had the highest level of quality life. Um, and and now what? You know, you no longer have cheap fuel. You no longer have booming industry. You're losing steam to China. And when you tell a boomer, let's make America great again, it sounds like music. And it's curious because in Brazil, the same way that we cannot say who Brazilian are because we can look anything in genetics, and you cannot say what is the traditional Brazilian meal because it's a mix of different food from different countries. You cannot say what religion is. Then guess what? Cambridge Analytica's Let's Take Back Control or Let's Make America Great Again. In Brazil, they are very simple three words: God, homeland, and family. And you can laugh and say, how is God, homeland, and family reactionary? It's not. And I say, yes, it is. Because 30 years ago, remember, most of us were Christians, most of Christians were Catholic, we were all going to church, there were lots of church in every small neighborhood, and we agreed about religion because people who believed in Umbanda, people who believed in Buddhism, they were so few that they would fade and hide among others, among a majority of Catholic Church. And if you believed in Umbanda or Buddha and you lived in a small city, You would never speak out loud about your beliefs because the rich guy in the city who would employ you was Catholic, and he had to believe that you were also Catholic, that you were Catholic too. And so people didn't fight about religion. Twitter didn't exist, and we all lived in small cities. So God was one, and family was united because we respected hierarchy. And homeland was also one. We were a country who didn't fight about politics. We all hated the militaries the same way, and um, we all loved soccer. We knew what being Brazilian was like. We had just arrived, running away from wars in Japan, running away from Poland, from Germany, from Italy. We were all here, and we all loved soccer, and we all wanted peace. So we kind of knew what Brazil was, what homeland was, and what homeland meant. And now, when we say God, homeland, family, family is so divided by different political perspectives and by woke and anti woke culture. And these concepts are not strong, they are not stable, they are not simple, and they cannot be controlled. So when Cambridge Analytica tells people in UK, let's take back control, when they tell Americans, let's make America great again, people feel good. And in Brazil, we felt good when we heard God, family, homeland. And there's another thing. There is Brazil above everyone, and God, Bra- Brazil above everything, and God above everyone. We it means that in their subconscious, Brazilian really crave for leadership, organization, peace, and discipline. That's why the extreme right could apply a speech that if we had a coup in Brazil granting total power to a to the former president Bolsonaro, we would be defending democracy. Yeah, they were crying for a coup that would save democracy. And it doesn't make any sense, but this shows how we want someone stronger than us to bring us union, peace, organization, so that we have a brighter future of prosperity. This is what most people want. They want the end of corruption, and we want to improve. And at the end of the day, this is what every human being on this planet wants. All these sayings from the far right are actually the same, and the people in the left want exactly that, but they got different triggers that only see evil in every word that is spoken at the right. So at the end, people are all manipulated, and they have no idea, and they cannot defend themselves against what is made to them with all the capital, with all the money that is invested in sponsoring ideas that will engage them in voting for the candidates of the sponsor. This is the same in most of the democracies nowadays. So I've told you all this not because I want to say that a specific party is better than other, because I think both are terrible, both right and left in Brazil, both Republican and Democrats in US. They are all bad. innocent, naive. And I just want to say that these people here, these people who are manipulated here, these people who trust this brilliant psychiatrist who is just great in her career, but naive in terms of geopolitics. Uh, these people are not happy with the genocide. They are not happy with the massacres going on in Gaza. And if they think that starving a child to death is something acceptable, is because they really think that it's what God wants, because what is being done is done by the people chosen by God. And you cannot blame Brazilians for doing so when in Israel there are people who believe and defend that, because they were also blinded by this speech that made Germans do what they did in the Second World War and Japanese do to the Chinese in Nanjing even before the Second World War started. It's so sad that it happens, but I can tell you, if you pick 5 people in this crowd and show them Palestinian families, they will definitely change their mind. They're here just for the crowd effect, and they are here just for abstract ideas that are part of a bigger speech developed and tailored to get control of crowds that will vote for whoever is sponsoring all this movement. Yeah, Lula said what he said, and the extreme right saw an opportunity to use his words against Lula, and to antagonize Lula, they were flying Israeli flags showing that Lula hated the people of God. And this is the average Brazilian being naive when they are completely not expected to be academics. And it doesn't mean that we want children to be bombed. So take it easy on us. That's it. And I I'm reading Cixin Liu's fiction books, the Three Body Problem, and I realized that those books are not about aliens. When Cixin makes us look at the aliens, he makes us look at ourselves and see. And when we think of aliens, and when we think of how we would behave in if we were exposed to a alien invasion, he's so brilliant that he shows what actually we really are. And by imagining aliens, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we see ourselves naked, and how limited we are, and how we don't make sense, and we will never make sense, because this is our nature. We are passionate, and we act according to our interests. I hope that, looking at how naive people are in this issue going on, I hope that when you see how naive we are regarding what's going on in the Middle East, and what the average Brazilian think a Israeli is, and what a Palestinian is, I hope you have a better look at the Palestinians and Israeli themselves, and you see how sad it is that we are so susceptible to propaganda, and how we are defenseless against Zionist speech, and how it must stop. Life for the children in Gaza. That's it. I hope I hope this is food for thought. Thoughts of your own. Thank you for listening.